Look around you. In the age of convenience, everything is designed to be easier, faster, softer. You can have food delivered in minutes without standing up. You can entertain yourself endlessly without moving a muscle. You can regulate your environment so perfectly that discomfort seems almost offensive. But beneath this shiny surface lies a silent killer: comfort. The Stoics knew what modernity has forgotten. Comfort breeds complacency, and complacency breeds weakness. Seneca warned us not to chafe at hardships, but to embrace them. Epictetus reminded us that luxury was not a friend of virtue. Marcus Aurelius, despite being an emperor, slept on a simple bed and trained in the cold frontier borderlands. They didn't do these things for fun. They did them because they understood a timeless truth. To grow, you must get uncomfortable. Comfort is the enemy of discipline. It dulls your edge. It makes you soft. In this video, we'll confront this truth head-on, not with vague philosophy, but with the raw and tested lessons of the Stoics. We'll dive into what it means to eliminate comfort, not just to suffer for suffering's sake, but to grow strong, resilient, unshakable. This isn't a call for masochism. It's a call for mastery. It's time to reclaim your edge. It's time to sharpen your mind, harden your body, and fortify your soul. This is the Stoic path, and it begins by eliminating what makes you weak. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Why comfort is a lie. Comfort disguises itself as kindness. It whispers to you, "You've earned this. Take a break. Avoid the stress. Protect yourself." But here's the trick. It never stops whispering. Once you listen, it keeps talking. It grows louder, more convincing. And before long, you stop questioning it at all. But the Stoics questioned everything. They understood that comfort doesn't love you. It traps you. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor." What happens when you grow addicted to comfort? You crave it constantly. You begin to fear its opposite. Cold becomes unbearable. Hunger becomes torture. Stress becomes collapse. You become weak in the face of life. The truth is simple. Life is discomfort. It is pressure. It is chaos. It is unexpected challenges, harsh truths, and the kind of daily friction that strips away illusions. You cannot control all of it. You cannot predict when tragedy or turmoil will arrive. But if you train for it, intentionally and consistently, you can endure it. And not just endure, it can forge you into something powerful, something immovable. The strength you need is not discovered in ease, but in enduring discomfort with grace. We see this play out every day, often in subtle but devastating ways. The moment someone loses their job, faces financial pressures, gets dumped, faces public failure, or encounters rejection, they collapse emotionally, sometimes physically. They spiral not because they are incapable, but because they were never taught how to stand tall under stress. They weren't trained for adversity. They were trained for comfort. They built their identities on padded chairs and validation. But the Stoics trained in advance. They didn't wait for chaos to introduce itself. They went out and practiced with it. They imagined exile and then prepared for it. They rehearsed loss, scarcity, and suffering not to be gloomy, but to be immune to surprise. They trained their bodies and their minds to be familiar with hardship. Seneca fasted. Epictetus, born a slave, grew his freedom within before gaining it without. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the most powerful empire, reminded himself daily that pain, sickness, and death do not care about rank or title. They all knew that comfort dulls the edge of awareness. The one who leans into hardship on purpose becomes a person life cannot bend. To reject comfort is to accept life in its fullness, not as a utopia, but as a storm worth weathering. It is to meet each obstacle, each drop of rain, each flash of lightning with open arms, knowing that the storm is where strength is forged. When you step into discomfort voluntarily, you're no longer a victim of circumstance. You become its master. You stop being reactive and begin to live intentionally. You choose the harder path, not because you enjoy pain, but because you crave growth. To embrace discomfort willingly is to declare to the universe, "Do your worst, I will still rise." It is a contract between you and your potential, a vow to chase power that can't be bought or borrowed. It's how you build an unbreakable spirit. The winds may howl and the road may narrow, but your step stays steady. This is not about defiance for its own sake. It's about accepting that the world will challenge you and meeting that challenge with composure, clarity, and conviction. Every hardship you face becomes a lesson, every sacrifice a teacher. The more you lean into voluntary discomfort, the less fear you have of involuntary suffering. You stop asking for life to be easier, and you start asking to be stronger. That shift, that mindset, is what separates the fragile from the unshakable, the common from the exceptional. This is the soil in which Stoic greatness grows. Choose one comfort to eliminate this week. Maybe it's cold showers. Maybe it's skipping one meal. Maybe it's sleeping on the floor. Don't do it to suffer. Do it to train. When you can endure discomfort willingly, it can no longer rule you. Chapter 2. Soft bodies, soft minds. There's a reason the Stoics emphasized physical training. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person who they are." The gym, the long walk, the early rise, these were not about looking good. They were about being ready, readiness for the real world, readiness for pain, loss, exhaustion, and unpredictability. When you train your body to resist the pull of ease, you sharpen the blade of your mind. Comfort, when accepted too long, deteriorates the body, and the mind follows. It erodes your mental defenses, your inner resolve. Modern life has made us sedentary, sluggish, dependent, comfortable beyond what is reasonable. You can live your entire life in temperature-controlled, cushioned, digital environments. Entire days pass without your muscles doing anything meaningful. But what happens when real adversity strikes? When you're forced to stand for hours, when there's no food for a day, when sleep is broken and your body aches? You'll break, unless you've been here before, unless you've visited this hardship voluntarily, rehearsed it, and learned to breathe through the burn. The Stoics did not separate body and mind. They trained both together because they understood that one influences the other. Marcus Aurelius marched with his troops not as a formality, but to cultivate grit. Cleanthes carried water not because he had no choice, but because he wanted to condition his will. They understood that hardship builds resilience, and resilience is the cornerstone of virtue. A strong body becomes a fortress in which a calm, rational mind can dwell. You cannot lead your thoughts if your body is always tired, always weak. Comfort weakens you in increments. It doesn't steal your strength all at once. It wears it down layer by layer, inch by inch, like water eroding stone. It takes it quietly, without fanfare, in whispers that sound like self-care, but rot your discipline. It tells you that waking up late is harmless, that skipping your walk is no big deal, that sugar or alcohol are harmless indulgences, that pushing back a hard decision is a smart move. Each time you listen, each time you compromise, you trade a slice of strength for a moment of ease. But the cost is steep. Every small concession chips away at your self-respect, and it happens so gradually that most don't notice until they've completely lost their inner compass. Not just health, but confidence. Not just energy, but self-trust. It's not only your habits that decay, but your very belief in your ability to endure. The voice in your head that says, "I can do hard things," becomes quieter each time you yield, each time you say, "Just this once," and make excuses. Eventually, that voice turns into doubt. Doubt turns into fear. Fear turns into paralysis. Then silence. And when that inner silence takes over, when your internal coach falls mute, even the smallest challenge feels insurmountable. You start avoiding things that once fueled your growth. What once felt optional now feels impossible. Tasks that once built you up now seem like burdens too heavy to lift. The mountain looks taller, your legs feel weaker, and the climb begins to feel pointless. The longer you wait, the more your internal power atrophies. The muscles of your will weaken. The voice of resolve trembles. The mind grows lazy and brittle, more reactive than proactive. The will becomes something you reminisce about instead of something you rely on. Your ability to push through resistance shrinks, not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself to flinch, to hesitate, to choose ease over effort. You become the architect of your own fragility. The world, which used to be a playground for growth, becomes a maze of things to avoid. Obstacles that once looked like invitations now look like threats. The Stoic trains to ensure that never happens. They understand that resilience isn't something you find in crisis. It's something you build every day, brick by brick, rep by rep, decision by decision. Each action is a vote for who you are becoming. You build it when you choose the stairs over the elevator, not because anyone is watching, but because you know ease erodes strength. You build it when you say no to that fifth drink, because you understand that every indulgence subtly erodes your command over yourself. You build it when you delay gratification, when you resist temptation, when you override that whisper that says, "You've done enough today." You build it when you do the hard thing first, instead of pushing it to the bottom of the list. The conversation you've been avoiding, the workout you don't feel like doing, the boundary you need to set. You build it when you stop saying, "maybe later," and start saying, "right now." Because right now is where power lives. Right now is the hammer strike that shapes discipline. Every time you act in spite of comfort, you reclaim a little piece of your power. You wrest it back from the jaws of convenience, from the seductive pull of ease that wants to lull you to sleep. Each act of defiance, getting out of bed before dawn, taking a cold shower, choosing water over wine, is a spark that lights your internal furnace. Every small act of courage strengthens the spine of your character. It proves to yourself that you are not made of glass, that you are not a slave to your preferences, that your will can override your whims. It affirms the truth, that you are not at the mercy of moods or surroundings. You are in command. That command is earned through repetition. Each moment you choose discomfort over indulgence, you cast a vote for your inner warrior over your inner child. And soon, discomfort is no longer the enemy. It becomes the forge in which your strength is shaped, the sacred fire where weakness is burned off and your core is reforged into something unshakable. It becomes your daily training ground, your testing ground, your proving ground. Not because you enjoy pain, enjoyment was never the goal, but because you've learned to mine pain for meaning, to sift struggle for insight. You've discovered that suffering, when chosen and faced with purpose, is the chisel that sculpts your soul. You've learned that adversity isn't a punishment, but an opportunity, an invitation to transcend your previous self, a chance to demonstrate courage to yourself, a moment where the gap between who you were and who you could be is narrowed by a single choice. And in that choice lies freedom. This is the essence of what it means to be stoic, to be sculpted by friction, not destroyed by it, to recognize that within each challenge lies the invitation to transform, to rise above complaint and rise into responsibility, to outgrow dependency and step into mastery, to fortify your soul in the face of struggle and walk into storms as though they were spring breezes. The Stoic understands that discomfort is the classroom of the strong, and they show up to class every day, willingly, humbly, and without excuse. Move your body every day, not as a chore, but as a declaration. It could be a run, push-ups, walking stairs, stretching. It doesn't matter. What matters is this: when you resist physical ease, you gain mental strength. Train both, and both will serve you when it matters. Chapter 3. Voluntary discomfort as preparation. The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined the worst so they would never be surprised by it. But they didn't stop at thinking, they lived it. Seneca often fasted. Why? To make himself unbreakable. He said, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, asking yourself all the while, is this the condition I feared?" What he discovered, what you will discover, is that the things we fear are far less terrible when faced head-on. Comfort fools us into thinking we cannot survive without it. It tricks us into fearing poverty, cold, hunger, loneliness. But when you taste these in small doses, voluntarily, you see that they are not fatal. They are simply feelings, and you are not your feelings. Imagine preparing for a marathon by never running. That's how most people live. They avoid every hardship until life forces one upon them. Then they crumble. The Stoic way is different. You simulate the hardship before it arrives. You live it on your terms. And when life tries to knock you down, you're already standing. This month, choose one form of voluntary discomfort to practice once per week. Wear your least favorite clothes. Walk long distances. Fast for 12 hours. Take a cold shower. Whatever you choose, reflect on this question. Was this really as bad as I feared? Chapter 4. The illusion of safety. Why do we cling to comfort? Because we confuse it with safety. We mistake the soft bed, the quiet routine, the predictable rhythm of our days as a kind of fortress. But safety is an illusion, a mirage that disappears the moment reality arrives uninvited. Life offers no guarantees. You can be rich today and broke tomorrow, healthy now and sick by nightfall, loved today, abandoned by morning. The Stoics knew this deeply. They didn't hide from life's unpredictability. They stared it down. They didn't build walls of comfort. They built strength through discomfort. Epictetus warned, "You are not disturbed by events, but by your opinion about events." And this is where the real battle lies. The problem isn't discomfort, it's your relationship to it. It's the belief that suffering is abnormal, that challenge means something has gone wrong. It's the inner narrative that discomfort signals danger instead of opportunity. We believe that if we control our surroundings tightly enough, if we eliminate risk, pad every corner, plan every detail, then nothing bad will happen. But this belief is false and fragile. It builds a brittle foundation that cannot withstand the weight of real life. Like a vase made of fine porcelain, it shatters the moment it's touched by force. You become hypersensitive to deviation, overreactive to friction, and dependent on predictability. But predictability is not the nature of life. It's the illusion we wrap around ourselves to feel secure. Comfort becomes a prison when we rely on it to feel secure. The irony is cruel. The more we protect ourselves from discomfort, the more vulnerable we become to it. What was meant to be a shield becomes a cage. You stop living freely. You lock yourself indoors, not to stay safe, but to avoid uncertainty. You avoid social risk. You fear failure so deeply you never take initiative. You fear judgment, rejection, mistakes. You second-guess every bold idea, every creative impulse. You build routines so tight, so sterile, there's no room for life to breathe. But life will break your routines. It will shock you, test you, stretch you beyond what feels tolerable. It will rearrange everything without asking for permission. And if you haven't trained for it, you'll feel like you're drowning. You'll panic not because the storm is unbearable, but because you've never felt wind before. You've never been cold. You've never been pushed. You've never walked barefoot on rough terrain or carried a burden without warning. You've never built the muscles to hold yourself upright when things get messy. The Stoic does not avoid risk. They prepare for it. They don't build walls around themselves. They build strength within themselves. They understand that safety is not found in insulation, but in preparation. They build internal fortitude instead of external protections. They don't seek chaos for drama's sake, but they are ready to meet it when it arrives. They rehearse instability so they won't be unmade by it. They practice detachment so that loss won't destroy their identity. They eliminate comfort not to suffer, but to sharpen. They fast so hunger loses its bite. They train in cold so that winter doesn't feel like betrayal. They imagine loss so that gratitude stays alive. They walk through voluntary darkness to better see in the real one. Their mindset is not rooted in paranoia, but in power. Because power is what emerges when you willingly endure what others avoid. By eliminating comfort, you learn to face the truth. Control is temporary, but courage is permanent. It's not about denying the value of order or routine, but about building a foundation that doesn't collapse when order vanishes. Life is not a controlled environment. It is unpredictable, volatile, and often unfair. Just when you think you've secured peace, chaos returns. Just when you think you've figured things out, something unexpected tests you. You must be trained for this, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You must cultivate a form of strength that does not depend on what surrounds you, but emerges from what lives within you. You don't need to control the external world to thrive within it. You need strength. You need readiness. You need the kind of resolve that gets back up without hesitation when knocked down, that stands steady and tall when the walls come crumbling down. You need the kind of awareness that doesn't panic at first impact, but breathes deeply and responds with clarity. You need the kind of composure that only comes from exposure, the daily voluntary practice of being uncomfortable so that discomfort becomes familiar. You may not be able to control the storm, but you can train to walk through it upright. You can prepare your footing in advance so you don't slip. You can learn to breathe in the chaos, to calm your racing thoughts and center your presence while others lose theirs. You can find your footing when the ground shifts beneath you and others run. You can cultivate an inner calm that holds steady when everything external falls apart, because you've made that collapse your training partner. When you've sat in the dark, walked through fear, and stood in the cold on purpose, it no longer owns you. And when the winds howl, you'll feel them, but you won't fall. They will not shake your identity. They will not unravel your values. They will not redefine you. You'll be one of the few who stands while others are swept away, not because you're unafraid, but because you've been here before. You've built yourself for this, and in standing, you become the example of what it looks like to live not softly, but solidly, not reactively, but consciously, not by accident, but by design. This week, do something that scares you. Speak up in a meeting, talk to a stranger, take a cold walk at night, interrupt your routine. Let your mind learn. I can feel discomfort and still be okay. Chapter 5. Luxury is a cage. Seneca once said, "It is the mind that makes rich." No man is poor who has enough, nor rich who craves more. Luxury promises freedom, but often delivers dependence. When you always eat gourmet food, plain food becomes unbearable. When you sleep in silk, anything else feels torturous. When you're constantly entertained, silence feels like death. Luxury expands your expectations until reality can no longer satisfy you. Then you grow resentful, impatient, dissatisfied. You begin to feel entitled to comfort and bitter when you don't get it. This is weakness. The Stoics practiced the opposite. They found joy in simplicity. Marcus Aurelius would write in his journal, in the cold of military tents, about the power of living close to nature. He ruled an empire, but kept his habits Spartan, not because he couldn't afford luxury, but because he refused to let it rule him. True strength is found in the ability to thrive with little, to enjoy the plain, not as a consolation prize, but as a quiet triumph, to not just tolerate discomfort, but to choose it deliberately, with the full awareness that it is shaping you into something rare. Choosing the unadorned over the extravagant, the simple over the excessive, builds a mind that is clear and a spirit that is calm. When you no longer need variety to be happy, when you can sit in silence without needing stimulation, when you can wear the same clothes and eat the same food without complaint, you've liberated yourself from a prison most people don't know they live in. To walk through life unburdened by excess is to reclaim control over your mind. It is to refuse the idea that joy must come dressed in gold. You begin to find beauty in the essential, in the routine, in the overlooked. The plain becomes profound. The ordinary becomes sacred. Each time you say no to luxury, you remind yourself that happiness lives within you, not in your possessions. Each time you choose discomfort over ease, you polish the steel of your will. You don't need more to be more. In fact, the more you strip away, the more your real self is revealed. This is the freedom the Stoics prized, not the freedom to indulge, but the freedom to endure. The freedom to move through the world unshackled by cravings, unaffected by the absence of pleasure, anchored by purpose instead of pampered by luxury. When you can walk through life unburdened by excess, when your peace is no longer tied to external comforts, you are not only free, you are formidable. Audit your luxuries. Choose one you can let go of this week. Skip the steaming hot shower for a cold one. Wear the simple clothes. Unplug from constant media. Observe how your mind reacts. Then remind yourself, I am not owned by these things. Chapter 6. The pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. The Stoics understood something modern minds often forget. All pain is not created equal. There is a pain that comes from effort, and a pain that comes from avoidance. One strengthens you, the other drains you. One pain is clean, sharp, and purposeful. The other is dull, lingering, and corrosive. Discipline hurts, but only for a moment. Waking up early, sticking to your plan, doing the difficult thing. It burns, yes, but it builds. It's the weight in your hand that strengthens your arm, the cold wind in your face that strengthens your lungs, the awkward conversation that strengthens your courage. These moments of discomfort become the moments you remember with pride. They become the bricks of your inner foundation, but the pain of regret is different. It doesn't come all at once. It waits. It sits quietly while you choose the easy way out, while you procrastinate, while you avoid. Then it arrives when the window of opportunity has closed, when the chance to act has passed, when you realize you betrayed your own standard. And that pain lingers. It haunts. The Stoics trained themselves to choose the pain of discipline so they could avoid the pain of regret. They understood that pain itself isn't the enemy. Pain without purpose is. And discipline, though painful, is always full of purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is possible to live out your whole life in virtue, even if denied every comfort." He wasn't saying it's easy, he was saying it's worth it. He was reminding us that virtue doesn't bloom in ideal conditions. It blossoms in effort, in friction, in commitment. Discipline is not glamorous. It's not romantic. It's showing up when no one sees you. It's choosing the hard road when the easy one is well paved and well lit. It's turning off the screen and picking up the book. It's keeping a promise to yourself when no one would notice if you broke it. It's saying no to fleeting temptations, not once, but over and over again until the muscle of restraint becomes second nature. Discipline is the invisible work that yields visible results. It's the slow, repetitive grind that makes excellence possible. These small decisions, repeated consistently, carve out your character. They become the spine of your self-respect. They form the core of your integrity. Every time you act with discipline, you prove to yourself that your word means something, that you are not a slave to moods or external triggers. When you choose effort over ease, you train your mind to respect your own will. You teach your body that it doesn't run the show, your values do. And when that alignment becomes habitual, it gives rise to quiet confidence. You start building a track record with yourself, an archive of hard choices made and followed through. You develop a kind of self-trust that can't be shaken by failure or rejection. You start to believe in your ability to face discomfort because you've done it before, not once, but repeatedly. That belief becomes a source of power, a kind of inner fuel that's always available when comfort tries to tempt you back into mediocrity. You train your identity to align with your values, not with the trends of the moment, not with your feelings on a bad day, not with what's easiest in the moment, but with the higher standard you've chosen to live by, the one rooted in your vision, your virtue, your philosophy. That alignment doesn't just make life better, it makes life meaningful. That alignment, that's freedom, that's power, that's peace. It's the kind of peace that isn't easily broken because it's not dependent on ease, it's built on endurance. The next time you're tempted to skip something important, your workout, your journal, that hard task, pause. Ask yourself, which pain do I want to feel? The sting of discipline or the ache of regret? Then move, act. Choose discomfort now so you don't wear regret later. Chapter 7. Emotional comfort is just as dangerous. Most people associate comfort with the physical, beds, clothes, food. But emotional comfort may be the most deceptive form of all. It's the comfort of not speaking your truth, the comfort of staying silent in conflict, the comfort of staying small to avoid judgment. It feels safe, but it makes you invisible to yourself. The Stoics were not emotionally numb. They were emotionally disciplined. They didn't fear their feelings. They studied them. They questioned every emotion that rose, not to suppress it, but to master it. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." That's emotional discomfort, facing the fear of social rejection to stay true to your inner compass. Emotional comfort tells you to avoid risk, avoid honesty, avoid authenticity. But every time you choose emotional ease over emotional courage, you weaken your character. You dilute your truth. You become a version of yourself sculpted by fear instead of principle. A Stoic practices emotional discomfort like a muscle. They speak up when it's hard, not because they enjoy confrontation, but because they understand that silence can often be a form of self-betrayal. They ask for help when it's humbling, because they value truth over pride and growth over appearances. They admit fault when it bruises the ego, because they know that humility is the foundation of strength, not weakness. They are willing to sit in the discomfort of vulnerability, knowing that true connection cannot exist without it. They challenge themselves not only physically, but emotionally. They intentionally step into moments where their heart races, where rejection looms, where uncertainty tempts them to withdraw, because they know that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of it. They've learned that integrity is built when your external words match your internal reality, and that emotional honesty, though uncomfortable, is one of the most powerful forms of self-mastery. Because they understand that emotional truth is a form of strength, it's the bedrock of genuine connection and inner harmony. When you commit to telling the truth, not just to others, but to yourself, you create an internal coherence that cannot be shaken by moods or external pressures. A Stoic does not shy away from emotion. They simply refuse to be manipulated by it. They greet it like a messenger, a signal to examine, not obey. They know that naming what they feel, rather than numbing it or denying it, is a form of self-respect. To feel something deeply and still choose action over avoidance is the mark of courage. Emotional avoidance doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stunted. It keeps you afraid of your own depth. It prevents you from building relationships that are real, because authenticity requires the risk of being seen. Avoidance whispers lies like, "You're fine," when you're not, or "They won't understand," when they might. It keeps you locked in a mental loop of defensiveness, self-editing, and subtle shame. It walls you off from your own growth and turns you into a character you play instead of the person you truly are. And hiding from your emotions is just another way of being ruled by them. The emotions you avoid dictate your life in subtle ways. They shape your choices from the shadows. Fear leads to silence. Shame leads to withdrawal. Guilt leads to self-punishment. You don't even realize you're reacting. You just call it your personality. You say, "That's just how I am," when in truth it's how you've adapted to emotional avoidance. But it's not who you are. It's who you've become in an attempt to stay emotionally comfortable. And what makes comfort so dangerous is that it's so quiet. It feels normal. When you avoid emotional discomfort, you become a slave to the fear of judgment, to the fear of loss, to the need for approval. You tailor your words to avoid conflict, your behavior to gain praise, your actions to maintain your image. But comfort at that cost isn't peace. It's performance. It's a mask that becomes heavier the longer you wear it. Eventually, you forget what your real face looks like. You forget what it feels like to be known and to know yourself. But when you face that discomfort directly, when you own your voice and step through the resistance, you begin to live with freedom. You stop negotiating with fear and start engaging with truth. You confront the discomfort that used to stop you and discover it was never as powerful as it pretended to be. You realize your silence was not safety. It was self-erasure. Every time you speak when it's hard, every time you honor your truth when it's inconvenient, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You reclaim authorship over your story. You stop outsourcing your worth to other people's opinions. You stop waiting for permission to be who you are. You begin to write your life with intention, with voice, with clarity. Your story stops being a reaction to what others think and starts becoming a reflection of what you truly value. The narrative shifts from "what will they say" to "what must I say to be whole?" You begin to choose based on values rather than pressure. You move from people-pleasing to principle living. You stop bending yourself into shapes that fit the comfort of others and instead stand rooted in your ideals. Decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You weigh them not by how painless they are, but by how aligned they are. You become resilient to criticism, not because it doesn't sting, but because it no longer defines you. You recognize that judgment from others cannot reach the part of you that's founded in purpose. You may feel it, but it doesn't shake you. That sting becomes something you welcome, even appreciate, because it shows you're standing where you need to. You begin to live not for applause, but for alignment. Not to be liked, but to be real. Not to perform, but to embody. Not to impress, but to express. And in doing so, you find something rare and steady, not the shallow freedom of comfort, but the deep freedom of authenticity, the kind of freedom that can't be given or taken, only claimed through courage, only earned through truth. It is the freedom of a life that belongs fully to you. Reflect on one thing you haven't said because it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's a boundary, a truth, a compliment, an apology. Say it. Send the message. Make the call. Let your words train your spine. Chapter 8. The Power of Repetition. Comfort often disguises itself as freedom, freedom to skip today, to relax, to cut corners. It whispers in soft tones that you've earned your rest, that you've done enough, that momentum can wait until tomorrow. But the Stoics found true freedom in repetition, in showing up daily, in doing the hard thing again and again until it became who they were. They knew that freedom without structure is just chaos dressed in softer clothes. It is not liberation, but decay. True freedom is the ability to act in alignment with your values, regardless of how you feel. And that capacity is built through repetition. Seneca said, "The mind must be given constant training. You must continue to fix it daily. Not occasionally, not when it's easy. Daily, because the mind, left alone, drifts. It wanders toward distraction. It grows lazy and loses sharpness. It seeks comfort, distraction, and escape, because those things offer relief without effort." But a Stoic knows that without intentional direction, the mind defaults to ease and decline. Repetition is how you anchor it. Repetition is how you tame its restlessness. It's the daily practice that turns philosophy into instinct, clarity into action. Repetition is how you transform fleeting intention into embodied identity. It's how you fortify your values against the erosion of time and temptation. It's how you build the muscle of resolve and clarify the contours of your character. Without repetition, you only visit who you could be. With it, you live as that person every day. It's how you become the person you say you want to be, not someday, but now, in practice, in presence, in pursuit. Comfort breaks repetition. It says, "You've done enough." But enough for what? Excellence, mastery, inner peace. Comfort doesn't care. It only wants now. It whispers with convincing ease, promising that rest is the reward, whether or not you've earned it. It seduces the tired, flatters the distracted, and camouflages itself as self-care. But beneath that softness lies sabotage. Comfort doesn't care about the future. It doesn't care about who you want to become. It only wants to keep you exactly where you are. It speaks to the part of you that longs for a break, that craves applause before the work is done. It tempts you with the illusion that you can pause your transformation and pick it back up at will. But momentum, once lost, is not easily regained. The energy you build through consistency is sacred. It compounds. And every interruption, every indulgence that pulls you away from that rhythm weakens your trajectory. It doesn't consider the future, the bigger picture, or the long arc of becoming. It doesn't factor in the quiet pride of keeping a promise to yourself, or the compounding confidence that comes from showing up even when you don't feel like it. It wants ease, not evolution. It wants shortcuts, not strength. It wants to seduce you with rest before you've earned your restoration. And it's not just trying to make you comfortable, it's trying to make you forget your power. And every time you say yes to comfort over consistency, you reset your progress. You stall your momentum. You dilute your identity. You train your mind that your feelings matter more than your values, and your body that discomfort is something to avoid rather than conquer. You trade compounding growth for temporary relief and long-term transformation for fleeting satisfaction. The Stoics understood that lasting strength is not built in bursts. It's built in cycles, in returns, in ritual, in repeated discomfort, in the small decisions that feel insignificant in the moment but become monumental over time, in the mundane moments that forge unshakable resilience, in rising again when your will falters, in showing up not because it's exciting but because it's essential. It's forged in the quiet repetition of principles when no one is watching. Repetition is the anvil on which the Stoic spirit is forged. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's steady, it's reliable. It's where philosophy ceases to be theory and becomes your way of life. It's how you turn your aspirations into attributes, your routines into your roots, your practice into your power. Choose one practice: writing, walking, meditating, training, and commit to it for 30 days straight. No excuses. Track it. Show yourself that discipline is not an event. It's a way of being. Chapter 9. Hard living is not harsh living. To many, the Stoic life seems harsh. Cold showers, minimal possessions, emotional control. But it isn't harsh. It's honest. It's clear-eyed. It's deeply alive. It's not about rejecting pleasure for the sake of punishment, but about seeking something more enduring than comfort. Clarity, strength, peace. The modern life filled with distractions, indulgences, and avoidance. That's what's truly harsh. It leaves you numb, disconnected, and fragile. It seduces you with soft surfaces while robbing you of inner structure. What appears harsh to the untrained mind is actually liberation in disguise. Cold showers aren't a form of self-denial. They're a practice in resilience. Minimal possessions aren't a lack. They're a focus on what truly matters. Emotional control isn't repression. It's sovereignty. The Stoic doesn't live a diminished life. They live an undiluted one. They strip away what is false and unnecessary so they can meet life face to face without the buffer of delusion. Hard living doesn't mean joyless living. It means choosing what strengthens over what soothes. It means training the soul, not indulging the senses. It means finding joy not in indulgence but in resilience, not in comfort but in clarity. The Stoic wakes up early not to suffer but to own their time. They train their body not to impress but to prepare for the unexpected. They reject luxury not out of disdain but to preserve gratitude, to keep their mind sharp and their spirit humble. They choose routine, simplicity, and challenge not because they are void of joy, but because they know real joy is found on the other side of earned peace. The Stoic is not grim. They are grateful. They are grounded. They are clear. Their joy is not shallow. It is earned. It is the kind of joy that cannot be shaken by the weather, by someone else's mood, or by the news of the day. It's the joy of knowing you can face what comes, that you don't need more to feel whole, that you've made peace with hardship, and therefore can experience real lightness. It's a joy that hums beneath the surface, a steady confidence, a deep contentment, a life lived on purpose. Reframe your discomfort. The next time something feels hard, tell yourself, "This is how I build joy. This is how I build depth." Let challenge become your practice ground for deeper peace. Chapter 10. When you eliminate comfort, you find yourself. Comfort hides your edges. It wraps you in padding so thick you forget where your strength begins. The Stoic life is not about rejecting all pleasure. It's about rediscovering who you are beneath the layers of convenience. When you strip away the soft cushions of avoidance, you're left with something real: your values, your voice, your power. When you eliminate comfort, you make room for truth. You learn what you actually need and what was just noise. You remember that you're not fragile, that you're not meant to be coddled, that you're capable of facing the hard things and still remaining whole. And that version of you, the one forged in effort, shaped by discipline and grounded in clarity, is the version the world needs, not just for you, but for those around you. Because when you choose discomfort, you become someone others can lean on. You become solid. You become steady. You're no longer moved by impulse or fear. You become predictable in the best way, steady under pressure, calm amid confusion, brave when others hesitate. You become an example of grounded strength in a world full of chaos. You hold your posture when others collapse. You speak clearly when others are overwhelmed. You think rationally when panic clouds the room. Why? Because you've built a life that practices adversity, not one that avoids it. You've conditioned yourself to remain whole even when the world frays at the edges. While others run from discomfort, you've walked toward it so many times that you now see it for what it really is: a teacher, a mirror, a forge. Eliminating comfort doesn't mean a life of constant suffering. It means a life of chosen struggle. You don't wait for life to train you. You train yourself so that when life comes swinging, you're already braced. You've already faced difficulty on your terms, so when difficulty finds you, it's familiar. It's not a threat. It's a reminder of how far you've come. The storms no longer feel like ambushes. They feel like invitations to rise. You meet them with the quiet understanding that you've been here before, and you'll walk through it again, stronger, wiser, and more ready than ever. What's revealed in discomfort is what's real. All the masks fall away. The pretending stops. When your muscles ache, when your ego is bruised, when your comforts are removed, only then do you meet the truth of your character. And that meeting, though painful, is sacred. It's the point of transformation. It's the moment you stop playing small and start rising into your purpose. You realize that the parts of you that were hidden beneath ease are the strongest, and only pressure could have revealed them. Only resistance could have made them known to you. The self you find in discomfort is the self you were always meant to become. Not the version that pleases everyone, not the one addicted to ease, but the one that stands firm in storms, leads with integrity, and lives by principle. That self is not built in pleasure. It's carved through adversity, polished through effort, and proven in repetition. It is steady because it has been tested. It is wise because it has been humbled. It is ready because it has prepared. And it is rare because few are willing to pay the price to meet it. This version of yourself emerges not all at once, but in pieces. Moments when you rise instead of retreat, when you choose what's right over what's easy, when you put your values before your vices. These are the moments that refine you. They aren't always glorious. Sometimes they happen in silence, in private battles, in difficult decisions no one will ever applaud. But you'll know. You'll feel the difference. You'll stand a little taller, speak a little clearer, walk a little more rooted in who you are. Discomfort introduces you to parts of yourself you never knew you needed. Patience, resolve, grit, humility. These aren't gifts you're handed. They are traits you earn by facing what most avoid. And once you've earned them, they stay with you. They become your armor, not the kind that hides you from the world, but the kind that lets you move through it with purpose. This deeper self is not fueled by recognition or reward. It's built on something far more solid: your principles, your discipline, your willingness to sacrifice comfort in the name of becoming. It's built in those quiet, uncelebrated moments when you choose what's hard over what's easy, what's right over what's tempting. That's why it's rare, because it requires solitude. It requires repetition. It requires the slow burn of persistence. It demands endurance when you feel tired and integrity when no one is watching. And it's not built overnight. It's earned slowly, with sweat, setbacks, and relentless recommitment. To live like this is to develop a self that is not shaken by insult or hardship. It is to build a character that doesn't rely on conditions to remain intact. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, not because you're perfect, but because you know you've been tested. You know you've been through fire and emerged with purpose, not bitterness. That trust becomes your compass when things get uncertain. And the deeper that trust grows, the quieter the world becomes. Distractions lose their grip. Approval loses its pull. So don't just eliminate comfort to look tough. Eliminate it to become true. Strip away what numbs you so you can feel what drives you. Peel back the layers of routine, convenience, and indulgence until what's left is real. Until the excess fades and the essence of who you are stands visible, raw, sharp, and honest. Remove what distracts so you can remember what matters. Let go of what softens your edges and return to what sharpens your purpose. Your purpose doesn't need to be spectacular. It needs to be sincere. It doesn't need to impress. It needs to align. And comfort, more often than not, is the enemy of that alignment. It clouds your clarity. It delays your decisions. It weakens your ability to act. You find purpose not in what makes you feel good temporarily, but in what holds up under pressure. The Stoic doesn't pursue meaning in comfort. They find it in contribution, in discipline, in the challenge itself. When you start living like that, the direction of your life becomes simpler, even if the path becomes steeper. You no longer ask, "What will make me feel better right now?" You ask, "What will strengthen who I am becoming?" The path isn't easy, but it's honest. It's the kind of path that grows narrower but clearer the further you go. You begin to see how many roads lead nowhere. You become grateful for the challenge because it means you're still growing. And that honesty, that clarity, is freedom. Not the freedom of escape, but the freedom of presence. The kind of presence that turns ordinary moments into sacred ground. Not the freedom to run, but the freedom to stand tall in all of life's seasons, with open eyes, an open heart, and a fortified soul. A soul that knows the taste of suffering, but has not been broken by it. A soul that has been stretched and shaped by effort until it became strong enough to carry others. A soul that doesn't shrink from the storm, but welcomes it as a reminder of what it's built for. With that kind of freedom, no storm can move you. No chaos can confuse your sense of self. No setback can shake the truth of who you've chosen to become, because you didn't drift into this self. You built it. You bled for it. You wrestled with doubt, fatigue, loneliness, and still chose to keep going. And that kind of self doesn't break. It only deepens. It becomes more anchored with each test, more resilient with each return to the path. It is the product of intention and trial, of repetition and reflection. And once you've met that version of yourself, you'll never trade it for comfort again. Review your last 30 days. Where did you choose comfort over growth? What would it look like to reverse that? Start today. Start small, but start.